Welcome to Texomiya podcast. Two little people from two big places making little big deals out of everything.
From remedies of the mountain heights to the gridiron of the coastal plains, a Texan and a Charlie will show you everything from Avatar Aang to Erich Auerbach in our personal and professional opinions.
God bless America. God bless Texas.
Joy Ayahom. Alright, so we're going to jump into episode 2 of Texomiya podcast, which is admittedly long overdue, but things have been incredibly busy around here. On top of normal work schedules and things like that, and coming to the end of semesters and getting all weirded out with stuff like that. We also had some other very busy times going on, like the agonizing tail end of dissertation defenses, the result of which now has someone having earned a brand new doctorate in the house. So, this is the part where we will reintroduce ourselves. I'm Dr. Andrew Simmons, and this is Dr. Superlina Deca Simmons, newly minted. So, lots of stuff happened, so we couldn't exactly get into everything. But we are picking up steam again now, both here and in some other platforms. I think we'll plug those here at the beginning and at the end. So, we have, of course, this channel, which is the Texomiya podcast. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and all of that to satisfy the algorithm and everything like that. This is Texomiya podcast, one of our 2, soon to be 3, I believe, YouTube channels. The other current YouTube channel is called Folk Meta, which just uploaded a video, I think, 2 weeks ago. So that is our channel for folk and soundtrack music and the combination of all of them. So go check that out if you're feeling interested in that. And then soon, I believe, to make its appearance on YouTube is our already established Instagram page, which now has a website. That is Shoots and Greens, the Instagram page. The website, I don't remember the link to it, but it is shootsandgreens something.com. So we'll put a link up at that somewhere. It'll be there.
Yeah, you'll get it at the end of this video.
So we have that one will, I believe, soon be getting its own YouTube channel.
It already has. There are more things that are going to be live soon. Interesting things.
Very good. I believe that's all of our stuff, isn't it? We also have a Patreon, and we'll put the link up on that somewhere, because right now we're doing this in spare time that we get from our day jobs, from our busy schedules. So if you would like us to have a little more time and resources to do these things, then you can always head up there and see recipes from Shoots and Greens. Maybe if things start taking off here, might put up some funnies that pop up from episodes here on Texomiya and maybe on Folk Meta. And of course, there's always dog pictures. Everyone loves dog pictures. So, but I think that's enough introduction. We're here on Texomiya podcast episode 2 to talk about Sound of Silence. So, do you want to talk about why we're doing Sound of Silence here?
You can go ahead.
Okay. Main reason we are looking into Sound of Silence is the constant, persistent, renewing relevance of this song, originally Sounds of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel. and has been covered and covered and covered over and again by many, many, many artists, including, I think, our favorite cover by Disturbed. That was done in 2015, and we'll talk a little more about that in a second. But we think that there's a reason why this thing gets covered so often, why it continues to renew its impact and its popularity. The most recent cover that I saw done, which we both saw, we didn't really fancy it that much. I think that's the way I'll put it.
Yeah, we'll come to that in a while.
But we'll come back to that. But that was in the T-Mobile football helmet commercial that anyone who's been watching football for the last 3 years.
It was AT&T.
Oh, it was AT&T. Mm-hmm. Oops. Sorry, T-Mobile. Sorry, AT&T. Sorry, both of you. Anyway, it appeared there, and that was 2022, somewhere between 2021 and 2022.
Yeah, it was the time when I was finishing my dissertation, the last chapter of my dissertation, and it suddenly popped up on TV. I'm like, oh, cool. One of our favorite songs.
And then it became not so cool because
we
kind of didn't like the way that they did it. But that's we'll come to that later. Mm-hmm. It might be in another episode, actually.
Absolutely,
but we'll see.
Yes.
We'll see. Anyway.
But I'm sure the intentions were correct.
Yes.
But we're not in people's brains, so I don't know what their intentions were. But what came out was not rightful is how we felt. But we'll come to that later.
Yes. So we'll start. Do you want to go through the history of the song? I already covered a little bit about it, but
go ahead.
Okay. So talked about, we went from Simon and Garfunkel with the original through all of the others, through Disturbed, through AT&T, and the university that they partnered with. But I want to talk a little bit about specifically our favorites here. That would be the original and the Disturbed cover. So the original was released in 1966. So for a little context, because that's what's really important here when we're talking about the history of the song. For a little context there, 1966, this is 3 years after the JFK assassination, and 1 year after the major escalations of U.S. involvement in Vietnam. Okay, so there's a lot going on there. And fast forward almost 50 years.
Yeah.
2015 minus 1966, that's what, 49?
Mm-hmm.
So almost 50 years later.
Almost, half a century later.
Yeah. Half a century later, we have 2015 with Disturbed doing their cover. In 2015, things had died down a little bit. Things happened here and there, but the United States was still in Afghanistan. And I think Bin Laden had been killed in, I think, 2011, maybe?
Around that
time. That was when Obama was still in office.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, in 2015, and this was released in late 2015, so that was well after Donald Trump had announced his presidential candidacy, and that campaign between him and Hillary Clinton was getting very heated, as was the general political climate in the United States at the time, and across a good portion of the world.
Yes. Everybody was watching.
We had, as Trump said, Russia going on in the United States and all of that and everything else, but we won't get too deep into it. Point was, in both of those instances, there was quite a lot happening. There was quite a lot of, shall we say, talking happening, but not necessarily speaking, if we want to come into the lyric of the song. a lot of hearing but not listening. So, should we talk at all about the lyrics? I feel like we should.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to. Before we do that, I just do want to point out that what really is appealing about this song and, its creators and recreators is the fact that they are using sound of silence as a concept, as silence being the state of human being.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There is disconnect between people. There are hardly any real dialogues because everybody is forced to keep up appearances, not offend anybody. And in that process, we do live in a world that is guided primarily by artificial dialogues, not real ones.
Especially if you look at the present, when it's artificial intelligence creating artificial dialogues. But that's for a different day.
That's for a different day. We can talk about social media, journalism, and all of that at a later time. Yeah, that is the main idea behind that, and it's the drawing factor for us, I think. And we can never stop talking about it. So
it keeps coming back up.
Here we are.
So I don't think we need to sing it. I think we can save that for another time. But we can at least, I think I can pop the lyrics up off the top of my head. That go from the beginning. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk to you again. Because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sounds of silence. In restless dreams I walked alone in narrow streets of cobblestone. Neath the halo of a street lamp I turned my collar to the cold and damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. It's different when you just roll it off. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more. People talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, people writing songs that voices never shared. No one dared disturb the sound of silence. Fools, said I, you do not know. Silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you. Take my arms that I might reach you. But my words like silent raindrops fell and echoed in the wells of silence. Then the people bowed and prayed, right? To the neon god they made. And the sign flashed out its warning in the words that it was forming. And the sign said, the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls, and whispered in the sounds of silence. And that's it. I did it.
You did.
So we'll come back to bits and pieces of those lyrics. We already talked about, historic incidences of people talking without speaking, hearing without listening. We also talked about people writing songs that voices never shared. Mm-hmm. No one dared disturb the sound of silence. That's those appearances that people are always trying to keep up that we've just talked about. So the place that we want to hang around here, the idea we want to hang around for this discussion is that the sound, or the sounds, if you go back to the original, which had the S, nobody else, I think, actually puts the S on. But the original had the S, if I recall correctly. The sounds of silence remain, or the song, that is, remains persistent and prevalent and relevant because it highlights societal corruption and subsequent societal decay, and some of the factors, one of the major factors, and one of the well, a representative of the collective of what we here are going to call a group of malefactors behind the sound of silence, and therefore the resultant decay and corruption. But, well, I'll talk about the corruption, and then we can unpack what we mean by silence, because there's good silence and there is bad silence. So that corruption is, I have here in my notes perpetrated, but maybe not necessarily perpetrated, but spurred, fed by certain malefactors, and that term will become more defined as we go on. But just in case anyone wants to call this vague, it's going to blow up a bit. It's fed by these malefactors who thrive on and prey on human situations and human flaws or weaknesses. We'll put that in air quotes because we'll talk about it in a sec. Or shortcomings or anything else of the like. That corruption is fed by those who prey on these things. So, but we said it's fed in silence, or it thrives in silence, but it's not all silence. So do you want to talk more about that?
So yes, there is good silence and bad silence, I suppose. I believe so.
Me too.
Yeah. Especially good silence has been phenomenal in helping marginal communities thrive, survive, persevere, go on with life, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to put this the right way, so it doesn't become highly political.
Well, what are we aiming for here?
So, historically, human society evolved in a very, having a very social aspect of existence. They thrived together in groups, in communities. And without communicating with each other, maybe survival, thriving, would have been extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Nonetheless, it is the basis of the human condition. We communicate. We are smaller parts of a bigger whole that is interconnected. It's a very symbiotic relationship between the self and the society, actually. However, as going back to the days that I used to teach literature to my students, is something that I used to ask my students in the first day of class. That when you first get into college, you want to make new friends, especially if you don't already have a community that has come together with you from high school days, right? And especially if you're in a big institution like any of our ones, let's say in the country, you have people from all over the world, from all over the country mixing together. So what are some of the tiny factors of similarity that you look for? You go to a bar or you go to a mixer. There are songs. Out of those maybe 5 or 6 songs, there is one song that you really, really like, and you move a little bit more, enjoy it more. How, I guess, the young people nowadays used to call jam to it more, right?
Dating ourselves with our vocabulary.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, we jam to it more, and then as you're jamming to it, you also notice a few others around you who are jamming to it more. Or, you go to a coffee shop at Starbucks, and You are sitting there working with your cup of coffee, and sometimes you overhear people who share similar tastes in coffee, creamer, flavor as you do. And maybe they're using the same brand of laptop, which in this country is mostly Apple.
Is it mostly Apple?
Don't know. It's a trend, especially among college kids, as I've seen. Like, they really like Apple laptops because I guess most people use it. That brings to the purpose of the question that I ask, you know.
Oh, maybe that's how it is now. I remember when I was in college that it was kind of split, but I think more to the side of what is it? PC.
Mm-hmm.
So,
As to the similarities that they find based on which they feel community with other students around them, and then maybe start communicating with them. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing that happens. That's the whole point of globalization and how beautiful existence it can be. Now, the problem arises when there is no growth. There is no real growth in such relationships. Let's say Starbucks, Apple, certain songs, certain kind of clothes, certain brands, you know, all of those materialistic things or non-materialistic things, they sort of set the tone for what can be included in that group and what cannot be. And with time, if people stick to that kind of code and only that kind of code and nothing else, then they're not only missing out on experiencing real dialogue, real communication with people from outside their closed group, but also missing out on communication between themselves. We're not looking for a hydra-headed multitude to head into the future and take care of our future, I guess. We need people to be themselves. No two individuals are the same. Mm-hmm. So that is where I suppose a part of the bad silence comes in, right? Now, at the same time as this bad silence goes on.
So just to make sure we're all clear, by the bad silence, you mean the silence that comes about not through physical silence, but through the lack of real communication, and therefore the lack of growth without that real communication and understanding.
Absolutely. I feel like our education system does not do a lot of justice in enabling real dialogues to happen between, you know, young generations as well, which further adds on to such a negative or bad silence. Mostly because, you know, if you're told from a very early age that, let's say having, trying to find a good example here.
Are you thinking of maybe making sure that nobody gets upset or something like that? Or are you thinking about something else?
I was just going to give an example of, you know, how if young people, like from a very early age in education systems and schools, if they are told that, you know, especially when it goes into race theory and stuff like that, let's say, certain skin color is bad, is bad, is bad, is bad.
Or if it's not bad, it's not entitled to a say on certain conversations.
Yes, it's like you cannot even speak about anything. You cannot even say anything, and like it's something that I've actually faced personally. Now, mind you, I'm not white, I'm not black, I'm not brown, I'm yellow.
Not white in the modern sense.
Not white in the modern sense. We'll go into that later.
We'll go into that later.
But a person from this country told me that I did not belong.
In an educational institution, in a public university.
In a public university where I was admitted because of my merit and came from a person who was completely and utterly disconnected to how universities worked.
And just for a little clearer context, lest people get the wrong idea, we'll just specify that this person was a woman minority.
Yes, a woman minority saying such a thing to another woman of minority. It's just unbelievable. And until that moment, I thought we were colleagues who respected each other's spaces and supported each other's endeavors.
Another example that you and I both saw just recently, I showed it to you, was a post that someone had put up on social media somewhere, which provided a short couple sentence narrative about a person who upset their coworker because they answered a question that the coworker asked, and the coworker got upset and said, "No, I want to talk to an immigrant." And this particular person, the speaker in question, who is Irish, said, "Well, I am an immigrant." I don't remember exactly what the end of it was, but they did not want to hear from them.
But they did not want.
They did not want to hear from them, and so it was not about. And what that means is that it was not about hearing from an immigrant. It was from hearing about, a particular type of person, Anyway,
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a prejudiced notion that is planted in young people's minds when they're very young, and that's just one example, you know.
But I think, we could go on in examples for hours.
Exactly. That's something. That's just one example, but like it goes on to prove the fact that young people are made to think within grid lines, within boxes, and they have been conditioned for so long, and they have been in those boxes for so long that sometimes they forget how the human brain works, that they have the innate capacity to think, to research, come to their own conclusions.
And we'll come back to human innate capacities in a second, because that's going to be very important. But I'll also just briefly say it's not just children either. We bring up children a lot because children are very important, extremely important.
They're our country's future.
When we're talking about corruption and decay of societies, often this starts with children. And the people who benefit from that decay, our malefactors, as we call them, they know this. And they have always known this. They've known it from, we can talk about most failed communist experiments. We can talk about the Nazis and the Hitler Youth, but we don't even need to do that. We can go back to We can go back to American colonialism, particularly in North America, when it comes to the schools that the Native Americans were put into,
Yes.
which educated them away from their own culture. That was the children. But not even then. We don't even have to go into something that recent. You can go all the way back to the ancient world. In the ancient world, a frequent peacekeeping option that people made use of to basically create a solution where one or both parties was presented with sort of a constant threat. It was not a real physical existential threat in itself. It was a threat to something important. And this, what I'm referring to, is the hostage exchange programs. It's the hostage exchange customs that happened. And this is often a thing that happened, either before, or it could have been before or after. Often it was after wars were fought. You come to an agreement, you say, okay, in order to really guarantee this agreement, we're going to take one of your princes or noble young folk, and they're going to come stay with us. And they're going to grow up with us. Some groups that were notorious for this were, pretty much all of the really big empires. The Romans were notorious for this. It came back to bite them in the butt sometimes. With especially with the Germans. But the Persians did it. The Babylonians did it.
A lot of groups around the world did it in some degree or another. I remember tribes in China, not in Tibet, in China, doing it. They would just pick up a princess or the daughter of a chief from another tribal community and just, make her live with them so that she gets to know their customs. At the same time, she's singing songs from her own tribal background and customs. And it's really sometimes violent, sometimes a beautiful thing. But there are learning experiences.
There are learning experiences, and especially when you get big empires involved, they're very deliberate learning experiences. It's enculturing. So it is altering the shape of the cultural shape of the youth. It's a very important thing. If you enjoy reading in the New Testament, then you get to see examples of this in, I don't remember which book of the New Testament it was in, but in one of those you have the statement from Christ that those who corrupt or lead children astray ought to be dropped into the sea with a millstone tied around their neck, I believe it was. Or something like that. At the end of the day, if you like going into Greek philosophy, at the end of the day, the thing that they finally prosecuted and executed Socrates over was corruption of the youth. It's a very important thing. People take it very seriously. But all of that's a very roundabout way of coming around to my point, which is it's not just the youth. And you see this everywhere. You see all over media, all over social media, people saying, well, I don't think you should be saying that. No, people don't say that these days. Or you can't say that because you're not this. You can't say that because you're not that. It is a thing that affects more than just the children. But... So that's an aspect of that negative silence.
Yes.
Do we want to go into the other negative silence Or do we want to go with some positive silences? I think you talked a little bit about them, but...
Well, I can unpack or just give a brief idea about, positive or good silence. I wouldn't say 100% positive, but it definitely is positive to quite an extent.
Productive, maybe we'll call it.
Productive, yes. It's very productive silence. Now, there are incarcerated communities all over the world, right? It hits very personal to us right now. We feel very much, I wouldn't say very much freer, much safer than we did like maybe a few months ago where we currently stay. But it's kind of the same concept, like
several months ago at this point. We're at the end of July, so
it's coming to 3/4 of a year almost.
Things in border towns have changed a lot in the last months.
And
we'll just leave it at that.
Yes. But I was just about to say that a lot of those people and communities, they cannot practice their own customs, their own ways of life, because they are overshadowed by this blanket of violence that is imposed by somebody or some people, usually social leaders in power, who either they do not want to understand the different customs, or they just choose not to acknowledge it at all. What happens then is that, give you a very common example from Northeast India, so many languages, so many customs, so many different kinds of religious traditions, so on and so forth, and lots of tribal communities. It's just that there has been this presence of military occupation historically, and the region has seen its own violence coming from outside, internal conflicts, external ones, the likes. But there is this imposition of a lot on that region. Now, mind you, in India, the states were formed on the basis of language dialects.
I was just looking at our books over there to see if I can pull anything out, but another time.
Yeah. So what happens in such a scenario is that, there are so many state languages, state-recognized languages, and national recognized languages, which makes perfect sense on paper, on Constitution. When it comes to practicing it, people do tend to not have open minds, even though they're from the same nation, recognized by the same constitution. There are sometimes people from particularly popular languages, so to say, who historically had the chance to get out and impose their customs on other states, other languages, other people. And it's in those instances, what happens is that there's lots of violence always going on, and like the common people, the common citizens of the areas upon which violence is inflicted, people die there every day, or they are made to go through different atrocities, atrocious behaviors, different kinds of violence. Now, if violence were to reign our lives, or those people's lives, and if violence was the cornerstone of existence, then there would be no peace. But there is peace. And that peace comes from the fact that those people sometimes form their own realities that do not follow the grid lines or are not fit into proper boxes. But they don't even do it in an in-your-face manner. They do it in a very silent manner. They just go on living their lives, practicing what they preach and what they think, and just keep to themselves so that the next generation has a chance at surviving. That makes sense?
Yeah. So that the next generation has a chance of surviving, and so that the next generation has that chance also, those things are passed down to that generation. Mm-hmm. So it's a silence of a group, not a silence within the group.
It's definitely not a silence within the group. It is a very pregnant kind of silence.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. And it's bursting with life. It's waiting to give birth to the next generation,
and
who
also
takes that silence and makes it loud
and also
and worthwhile,
giving birth to cultural materials. Mm-hmm. And that's why I was just looking at some of the books that we have over here, mm-hmm. because what happens often is that because of those efforts to preserve, then you get people who come out and they write stories about their experiences. But the only way that any of this gets out is if the stories are shared.
Now that
a song that a voice actually shares rather than not.
See, that brings us to sort of the negative silence, back to the negative silence that we were talking about.
Daring.
When it comes not just to not daring, but also not sharing, as well as not daring to share. Well, okay, there are people who do not dare to share for the fear of being not accepted,
or worse,
or being killed, or offending somebody and getting killed, or other things, or not being employed because the people you're applying, the company that you applied for a job at believes in only a certain kind of minority, and dialogue is not inclusive per se. Different problems. Like we can go into this, whole publications, what is published, what is made readily available, what is circulated more in the media, so on and so forth. It's all part of that silence, and unpacking that further with time, will help all of us understand better, I'm sure. There was something I was about to say.
We were talking about not daring, not sharing.
Yeah.
Reasons why people might not.
Oh yeah, we were there. Oh yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Going into the negative silence that is not sharing, not daring, whatever.
Yes. And, at the same time, there is also, that goes hand in hand with such kind of a silence, or being silenced, is the fact that my first point that I was trying to make is the fact that people sometimes forget their innate capacity to be humane, to have a cultural encounter, an exchange, a dialogue of sorts with something that was outside of the box that they were taught to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, this box or these grid lines are becoming narrower and narrower day by day. Even with respect to why these kind of materials are not circulated, there is only a certain kind of language Like, that's where I guess my concept of pity porn comes in. All right. You have to focus on the suffering aspect of it. Only then people are willing to even pay attention to what you are trying to convey. If you talk about survival, if you talk about persevering, it does not get heard as often. People are always stuck on, okay, who was killed? How were they killed?
You have to start everything off with an acknowledgement of somebody's suffering or other kind of problem. So,
and I do not know what gives some people the power to poo-poo, the difficult situation that realities of certain minority communities face, or even majority communities face. Now I think we see a lot of reversal of that minority majority. I think we're way beyond minority majority dichotomy at this point. I think it's become more of a who has more power.
There's a lot about who has more power.
Yes, it's because of these decades and decades of very calculated sort of brainwashing that has happened.
It's a lot about who has the power, and it's a lot about who does who think should have the power. It's about in-groups and out-groups, and I'll kind of use this to sort of start summing up our discussion about good and bad, positive and negative silence.
We should also, I think, point out, don't you think, before we come to the conclusion, what we did essentially is like an overarching thing, like it's a cycle, it's a theme of violence and silence that goes hand in hand, that keeps on repeating itself throughout history. I think it's going on to what you said about malefactors preying on
malefactors and preying on like we said, quote unquote weaknesses, and we'll talk very shortly about why we put that in scare quotes. But yeah, so we talked about, we've got positive and negative silence, and there's a couple types of each. We're going to focus on the negative not because we're pessimists, but because that's the discussion we're having right now. So in these negative types of silence, there is the silence that happens. This is talking without speaking, hearing without listening. This is the negative silence that happens when there is the illusion of dialogue, but that dialogue produces no real developments, no real growth, because there is a lack of understanding, whether that is intentional or unintentional, witting or unwitting, forced or not, whatever. That's one type, is the lack of dialogue through the lack of understanding. The other type is the silence that's produced by the lack of daring and the lack of sharing. And again, there can be many reasons why one would not share or not dare to share or anything like that. But these negative silences are the things that these malefactors prey on. Now, here we'll come to why I say this is not necessarily inherently a weakness. And this has to do with human biological development. Because let's go back to our example of a group with that pregnant silence that keeps to itself so as not to, well, bring problems upon themselves. This is a very natural kind of silence, actually. Some circumstances in which it arises are not optimal. A lot of the circumstances we talked about were not optimal. But if we go back to, the fact that humans are social creatures, discussion, dialogue, communication is a natural thing for human beings as social creatures, but there are limits to this. Just like there are limits for any social animal. Won't talk about at what level of sophistication do we start making those boundaries permeable and anything like that. That's again for a different discussion. But at a certain point, this started, I'm sure, very early on, it becomes clear for groups of humans, what we might call in-groups, communities, it is prudent for them to be wary about who they share with. That is, who they share their interactions with, who they share their resources with, their knowledge with, their practices, customs, whereabouts with. Why is that? Because you don't know everyone who's outside of you. And because you don't know what their intentions are. And so it behooves you not to let on too much. Same kind of thing happens, if you watch enough nature documentaries, you'll see stuff about pretty much all animals, but especially herbivorous animals that tend to be prey animals, will do everything that they can to mask any kind of weakness. So that's a way, it's a natural driver that encourages humans to shut others out. Because if you let that other too close, they could potentially hurt you.
Because they have done so in the past. Mm-hmm.
And so, and again, these kind of interactions will change. They'll change in frequency as groups get more sophisticated and things like that. So it's a natural drive, and it's rooted ultimately. We talk about if you do too much, then you can get hurt. It's rooted in a drive for self-preservation. So the self-preservative drive is about gathering what you need to yourself so that you can live, and keeping things away from yourself so that you can live. The malefactors that we claim are at work in promoting silence know that and I don't know if they think about it in such a sophisticated roundabout way. It's maybe more of an instinctive way that people who are inclined to take advantage of others know. But these malefactors encourage silence because they know with enough interaction, starting out with cautious interaction, growing less cautious as you're more familiar with others. This is the globalization phenomenon. As you become more familiar with outgroups, as they're called, then you become more likely to share with them and to interact with them. And the more trust that there is between groups, the better off I think we'll all agree that we are. Mm-hmm. So, certain individuals, groups, malefactors know that they are better off, they are better able to manipulate other human beings if those human beings are not in communication. Because the more that you are in communication, the more that you can say, hey, have you noticed that every time something bad happens, those people seem to be just fine? In fact, better off most of the time. If people are not talking, that does not happen. So it's a discouragement discouragement from dialogue.
Yes.
Encouraging silence or encouraging a dysfunction of dialogue. Which preys on a self-preservative instinct. Gathering resources, pushing away outsiders. And so this allows someone who wants to take advantage of that silence allows them to more and more put a collective human unconscious, this is a Freudian collective unconscious, not the Jungian, that's a different thing, but it puts the global unconscious off kilter. It puts it out of balance, and it really drives it more towards the influence of instinct, that is, of id rather than ego, of instinct rather than the rational. And again, that id is prioritizing instinct, it's prioritizing self-preservation, therefore self-service, self-advancement, and that in turn will fuel a certain amount of what we these days have been frequently calling tribalism. That's a big royal we, like the entire, every time you turn things on these days. It's kind of declined because, as often happens in the world of mass dialogue, certain terms come in and out of trend.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Tribalism is on its way out, but
it comes and goes.
Yeah, and so it promotes this kind of tribalism. It also, in hoarding resources, that's also hoarding information. Because also, if you are worried about others catching on to you, you want to keep information to yourself. It produces a form of greed, but not just for information. At a certain point, if you really push self-preservation far enough, you get an overzealousness for comfort. Comfort is a subset, sort of, a sub state of being beneath safety. And what you get, I mean, especially if we're talking about the really bad malefactors, what do you get every time any of these really come to power? And that's when things get very, very ugly and genocides happen.
Yes.
They get, you are unsafe because of this, or that, or those people, or whatever. You are unsafe. You can't make people feel unsafe. You can't make people feel unsafe, and some people feel unsafe if you say this. You're not allowed to say that anymore. That kind of silence especially is something that produces in a greed for comfort. You're producing eventually no small amount of entitled or privileged feelings, but you also produce a lot of aloofness. Because, and, you know, we'll, these are some other things that we'll unpack in a bit. but it creates this aloofness, and this entitlement creates a dependence on those who manufacture them, the malefactors. And this is because you get far enough into it, those are the people who are responsible for setting the boundaries of what can and can't be done,
Absolutely.
what can and can't be said. And
I mean, these are all can be examples of social leaders. They market themselves as some sort of ethical mediators.
And these can be political leaders, these can be media leaders,
Yeah.
these can be religious leaders even.
If a person has access to a community or communities that will take notice of what they say and what they preach, then and if this person tries to be an ethical mediator, but in a negative sense of the term, if they make absolutes, like, for example,
The Sith.
for example, the Sith. I was about to say, for example, we're not allowed to criticize a lot of people who live on unemployment. I mean, if you have an able body, if you are able to work, the satisfaction of working and getting 2 square meals a day even is far greater than just sitting at home and just collecting your unemployment checks, But I guess this is again an example of aloofness, and it comes about as a result of these ethical mediators telling those who have jobs that you cannot say anything, not even criticize those people who live on unemployment.
So, and I think this is a good place to jump into, we're going to come back into the lyric again. This is a good place to introduce our discussion about the neon god. The neon god they made, the neon sign. So, there's a very, and if it's not obvious enough yet, the neon god is what we have turned into this term that we've called malefactors. And the neon god represents, the malefactors represent many groups, and we've talked about a couple of them just now. It can be social leaders, it can be political leaders, it can be religious leaders, it can be media leadership, it can be anything. Now, in a very literal sense, the song is talking about, is sort of pointing at media leadership, a combination of media and socio-political leadership. But it's a lot more than just those, and it produces, well, the major things that we've pinpointed are entitlement and aloofness. And there's a few different ways that this entitlement and aloofness can be produced. I think it's pretty easy to see how entitlement is produced. This is, saying that, no, you deserve to have this kind of amenity or accommodation. You deserve not to be uncomfortable, to be made uncomfortable by whatever or whoever. That is one thing, and it's very apt to call these things gods, because the entitlement and the aloofness creates a dependence on them. If you're looking at entitlement, it is, I am entitled to this, and it shall be given to me. And this entity is going to tell me how I will get it, or they're just going to give it to me. They're going to tell me what I need to do to get it. Okay? So that is one that comes from, and we sort of divide the neon god into two different types of god. The entitled god, and this has nothing to do with a generational conflict. It's really more of a circumstantial thing. It is really just a matter of comparability and compatibility. The god of entitlement is a new god. It is, what did you call it? You call it glitzy. And again, it's the giver of things. And if the things start flowing, people get upset. And the god needs to direct them to something that is to be made the receptor of the upset.
Yes.
So I think that one's very easy to understand. Wouldn't you say?
To an extent, yes.
Especially if you and it's
well, I think it's important to differentiate when we're talking about entitlement. We're talking about it from a social aspect, political aspect, and a sort of cultural, linguistic, humanities aspect. We're not talking about entitlement as a form of land property or cars
or the kind that often gets thrown around when someone is trying to call someone petulant and childish.
Right, exactly. Like if somebody's parents have properties and they want to pass it down to their children, those children are entitled to those properties as listed in the wills of the parents. If they're listed, then they're entitled. If they're not, well,
we can kind of put this in.
Yeah.
We can kind of talk about this in the same way as we did about silence, is that there is a positive entitlement. You can be positively entitled to something. You can also be negatively entitled to something.
Right, exactly. Like the religions that we grew up in, the languages that we spoke right after, growing up, after a few months out of our mother's wombs, we're entitled to those languages. We're entitled to those cultures. And it's our duty to uphold them, right? Now,
The entitlement that the neon god breeds is a very personal entitlement. Those are all very communal entitlements, the positive ones. Entitlement to an inheritance that is given to you. Entitled to language and culture that you are born into. Those are very positive. Those are communal. Into a culture, into a language, into a family estate. The very personal entitlement is, frankly, a very self-serving, self-preservative entitlement. So there's another. There's the aloofness.
yes.
So the entitlement is a very new, glitzy, a very new God way of looking at things.
And it's very powerful, it's very blingy, it's very glitzy, which is why people fall prey to it so often.
The aloofness is a very old God way of looking at things.
I suppose, yeah. Yeah, communities have been obliterated because they were aloof.
And the aloofness is... the aloofness also comes from a dependence on the God. And a dependence born out of the assumption that the God will provide it. And again, this can be any number of things. It can be social, it can be political, it can be religious, it can be just the out-of-touchness that people ascribe to children of very rich parents. and they say, oh, they're so out of touch. They don't know that you actually have to work for anything in your life. Stuff like that. That is a very aloof thing. And we've seen it happen. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but it has been observed happening that certain members of a family pass away who were the ones who built up the family and the estate and the wealth, and thereafter it is squandered and the rest of the family fall on very hard times. That happens because they were aloof. Because they were aloof to everything that it took to actually build that up.
I mean, if we're going to an ancient example, look at Caesar.
Mm-hmm.
After he fell, he was a great leader of his people, everything. After he fell, there was this sort of lack of a proper family member who could even remotely go in the same direction that he did, right?
Augustus kept it going for a short amount of time, and I mean, yeah, things did kind of peak around then, and they rose and fell a few times, but eventually, yeah, it did peter out. So there was a point at which, yes, that aloofness is what. I mean, I'm not going to. Hazard of the profession, I'm not going into all of the myriad of things that we can attribute the fall of the Roman Empire to, but yes, that is a major factor. If you're looking in a religious sense, and this is one that you and I have been griping about lately, but it's a topic for another day, but just in short, in a religious sense, or even in a political sense, in the same way, you get, let's say, it's what we might call the Lord will provide paradox.
Yes.
And this comes from the story where Abraham is taking his son Isaac out to make a sacrifice, and Isaac says, "Well, where's the ram, Daddy? Where's the ram?" And Abraham's like, "Well, there's going to be a ram. It'll come. It'll be there." And then, not talking about the fact that Isaac is supposed to be the ram, and he keeps saying the Lord will provide the ram, and so he goes and he's about to do it, and the angel comes and interrupts everything and says, "Oh, wait, stop! It's over there. It was all a test." This manifests today most often, as I see, and I think as you see as well, in the presumption that it will all be taken care of. This can be either by a god, it can be by fate, it can be by the government. If we want to talk about political sense, this is the kind of aloofness that I think a lot of Americans have had. We've talked about this too.
Yes.
That it has been...
If you don't go out and vote,
well,
you've seen the consequences in the past.
Sure. I mean, that's a very short-term example. That, people think, well, we can't lose this one, or there's no way that person's going to get elected. And sure enough, they do, because, well, those people didn't go out and vote because they all thought that it couldn't happen. That's a very short-term example. Very long-term example, still in the United States, is the fact that, let's see, that would be 1941. Was the last time that there was actual combat on American soil in U.S. territory. And that wasn't even on the mainland. No. If you want to get back to actual combat that happened on mainland U.S. soil, I mean, that was... that was back at the tail end of all of the. That was at the tail end of the Civil War and all of the Indian relocations.
Mm-hmm. The
so
American Native
American
Indians.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we should specify.
I'm allowed to call them Indians. So I'm allowed to call them whatever I want because I am one. So,
yes, you are.
But yes, to clarify, yes, the American Indians, the Native Americans. So, around the end of the 19th century, late middle 19th century. So, yeah, we're looking at hundreds of years. It's been, well, not hundreds, but it's been over 100, I think almost 200 years. Almost 200 years.
Almost 200.
Since there's been any major conflict on United States soil. And frankly, I think a lot of people do not realize that. And it's, even been a long time since the United States was involved in a conflict that claimed mass amounts of human lives. Well, at least, this is a complicated one, actually. At least in so much as it was willingly disclosed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of conflict around releasing death tolls in, let's say, the Vietnam War,
Vietnam, for example,
and in the Afghanistan War.
Mm-hmm. Even now, how was it even this time when U.S. troops were just in a flash of a second just made to evacuate.
Yeah, but it's been a long time. The death toll in those were actually catastrophic. It's just that they were downplayed quite a bit.
Yeah.
We might say by malefactors who didn't want people talking about them. They still don't want people talking about them. But that's part of the point, is it's keeping people aloof to the idea that, one of these days you could have conflict on your own soil if you're not careful. And then there's, that's a very long-term political way of looking at things. If you want to look at, if you want to look at global issues, that aloofness comes in the idea that, well, no, everything is just going to work itself out for the good, or it's going to work out as it's supposed to, it's going to work out as planned, or anything like that. It's a very aloof way of putting it, because it is ignorant. And this is, again, this is not just a United States thing. This is a very Western thing. Western being, the term that in most of modern history has been used for the United States, Canada, occasionally Mexico, and most of Europe.
Most of Europe, yes.
And so, and it is that's what we mean by Western. It's a very Western problem, and that's, again, because the West has been out of hardship for quite a while. And look at a lot of things as well, they'll just work themselves out, because a lot of people just grew up with things working themselves out. Someone who comes from a place where things do not just work themselves out, really, if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, sure, everything does eventually work itself out, but it's not necessarily good for you.
Yes, and also, even if, in the past, if things have worked out for some people, some of the Westerners, like you call them, that happened under different circumstances. We're headed towards a very chaotic time in present and history right now. And if people are still being aloof, it is a sign of, I would say, go back to Ricoeur's memory, history, and forgetting. They have forgotten. They have forgotten.
And they will be forgotten.
And yeah, in the process, let's hope they will not be forgotten. But yes,
they're not careful.
Yes, they practice a silence of aloofness.
That is not speaking up about injustice, not speaking up about, I don't feel like this is the right policy, I don't feel like that's the right thing to do, I don't think we should let this person do that, whatever, anything. There's a lot of people who will think those things, they will say nothing of it. And
if the generations that came before them were to practice such an aloofness, United States would not be a developed nation.
It would not be in existence as it is today, that's for sure.
Today, exactly.
So
it would not be. So we're also, when we're talking about aloofness, we're also talking about being silent and not doing or acting in a way that best serves the future generations that come after you. It's a great disservice, I think.
To yourself and to the future.
Absolutely, yes.
So I think we've lingered over it enough. I think we've made our point. The malevolent encouragement of silence, discouragement from dialogue, encouragement towards self-service, self-advancement, self-preservation, eventually will produce that entitlement and that aloofness that we've talked about. And those are different kinds of execution of silence. And the only way to get out of them is by talking.
I mean, if you've never done, for example, go to your local veteran community. Go talk to a veteran if you haven't, and maybe
be careful about it. But
I was about to say, maybe talk to a veteran who has actually seen combat, and be mindful of their spaces. Sometimes their experiences were so traumatic, they might not want to talk about it. But if they do, go talk to them today.
Yeah, that's why I say be careful about it. Not because maybe they're going to punch you in the face because you asked, but because there are ways to ask these things. There are ways to listen to it.
Yes.
I mean, you don't expect the whole story, really.
Absolutely not. And saluting them.
All right. So as it happens, we had an incident right at the end of recording things. I think we only lost about 15 minutes or so of stuff.
Probably lesser.
At least of substantial stuff, I think. Yeah, probably 10. 5 to 10. Anyway, lost a bit of content, but we're going to try and pick it up where we left off, or where it left off, and then wrap things up. So, we left off talking about how the perpetuation of silence by malefactors is done deliberately to steer people away from dialogue and to encourage them toward self-preservative mindsets rather than rational mindsets, which eventually leads to self-service and self-advancement, etc., etc. Those actions lead to aloofness. They lead to entitlement, and those states of being are manipulated. That's where we left off. It was malicious. It was malefactors maliciously manipulate the masses. So those states of being, the aloof and the entitled, are manipulated by malefactors, either into continuing their aloofness and staying out of things, and that can be done very easily in conjunction with any other number of tactics that are used to keep one from daring or sharing, or both. Any of those, and the entitled can easily be stirred up so that they are easily thrown into a frenzy in order to coerce others or to frighten them into submission. So all of this is done in the absence of dialogue. And oddly enough, it has to be brought about by dialogue. But it's not real dialogue. It's manipulative dialogue that is on both sides empty. One side empty because it's manipulative, and the other side empty because it's not understood. And that allows the manipulator to get through. So, that's pretty much where we wrap it up.
Yeah.
It is a cycle that continues, and it continues so reliably because it preys on elements of human nature. It preys on instinct. And it is easier to prey on it now because in the last 3 decades, the number of vectors by which manipulators, malefactors can operate have blown up. There's a lot of things that have come out since the development of the television. So far more avenues for manipulation now, which makes this an even more relevant, and it makes it even more pressing that we get proper dialogue into place. Makes it even more important that we encourage people to engage, not to be silent, not to talk without speaking, not to hear without listening, not to write songs that voices never share, because no one dares to break the sound of silence. Do not listen and follow blindly after the neon god, whether that's the old god or the new god. Mm-hmm. Do not blindly follow. Do not sit by the wayside and assume that everything is going to work out for the better. Mm-hmm. And do not think that you're owed anything for no reason at all. Don't think that they're going to give it to you.
Even if you are owed, nobody is going to give it to you. It's only going to be taken away from you.
Yes. So, yes, and that's not to say that no one is deserving of things.
No.
Yeah,
that's why I brought up the example of unemployment,
yes. We have human rights for an issue. There are things that we agree humans deserve. So, but yes, that's just to clarify the point. Mm-hmm. So, it's imperative at this point that we engage in proper dialogue. Part of the reason we started this podcast is because we don't want to sit silent as things go awry. Mm-hmm. So, I believe that's it. Unless there was anything else, any nitty-gritties or any major issues that we missed?
No, not really. No.
Yeah. So we'll sign out of Texomiya now. Our apologies if after the split in our timeline we missed any major details or left anything unconnected, but it was, we had to pick up as best we could. So we're going to sign out of Texomiya now, and we'll take this time to say the obligatory like, comment, subscribe. And also visit our other channels, the other two channels that we have on YouTube. Those are Shoots and Greens, which is developing as we speak, or as you're viewing this, I suppose, and Folk Meta, which is our music channel. Both of those are sort of running. Folk Meta, again, just released something in the last couple of weeks. And then also follow our Instagram page. That's also Shoots and Greens. On the Instagram page, you will find a link to the Shoots and Greens website. On the Shoots and Greens website, if you feel so inclined and have the means, then you can always follow the link, a number of links on the website to our Patreon, where you can donate if you want us to, if you want to send us some resources to help us keep this running, and want to also see some cute pictures of our dogs and get a hold of some good recipes.
Yes, and also a lot more behind the scenes.
And last but not least, do you want to say anything about Shoots and Greens' physical operation getting up and running?
Sure, absolutely. As of now, Shoots and Greens is welcoming catering and bartending orders. We're up and running, and if you are anywhere in Texas and need some of our special services, which include beautiful event planning as well, to cater your needs, just give us an email or DM us. Reach out.
And I'll just make a quick amendation to that and say, if you're in Texas in the Gulf Coast or Hill Country region, if you're in Houston, Austin, San Antonio, Laredo,
Corpus.
Webb County, or Corpus Christi, then yes, give us a call. So I think that's that. And so now we'll do our Texomiya sign out. You want to start it or me?
I'll do it.
Okay.
God bless America. God bless Texas.
Joy Ayachom. Howdy, everyone. We're just making a little addendum to this episode. We have been pretty busy for a while since classes started and everything like that, and since Shoots and Greens has been doing some catering work. We haven't had a lot of time for everything else, but we thought now would be a better time than ever to get this episode up. But before we do that, we want to add something in here because today is September 11th, the day after September 10th, when Charlie Kirk was assassinated in Utah. And we thought there was no better episode to the end of which we could attach something like this than one on silence and the results of continued silence and provoked silence, forced silence. So, before I get into it, we'll just extend our deepest condolences and sympathies to his family, especially his wife and his two children, who I'm sure have got to be dealing with everything all at once in the worst kind of way right now. I'm sure they're hearing plenty from plenty of people, which to them is surely a blessing. So let's add this slightly formal, slightly informal extension of our own into that. So, what I'm going to start out with, and then Superlina will come in with some more after that, is sort of a recap of what we said about types of silence. And in particular, I'm going to sort of recap the sort of silence that we talked about, which emerges directly in the lyric of the song. People talking without speaking, people hearing without listening. And we said that this kind of silence and the people who carry it out, not the ones who stoke it or promote it, but the ones who carry it out, being silent by talking without speaking, hearing without listening, are very easily manipulated and very easily swept up into a frenzy. And as it happens, there is a tweet that Charlie Kirk himself put out April 7th, 2025. So this past April, he sent this tweet out. And I'll read it here. We'll put it up on the screen. It says, "Assassination culture is spreading on the left. 48% of liberals say it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Elon Musk. 55% said the same about Donald Trump. In California, activists are naming ballot measures after Luigi Mangione. The left is being whipped into a violent frenzy. Any setback, whether losing an election or losing a court case, justifies a maximally violent response." There's some more that he tacked on after that, but that's not what I'm focused on here. What I'm focused on is this exact issue. The fact that if you are silent for that long in such a way that you hear without listening, and then in turn, if you talk without speaking to those who hear without listening, you have a recipe for people who are very prone to do what they're told because they expect some reward or are conditioned that way or whatever. You have a, unfortunately, very high chance of something like this happening, or some kind of rioting or major catastrophic social event of some kind. So, just to stress the importance of making sure that this dialogue happens. And speaking of that dialogue, I think I'll hand it over to my wife, and she will talk a little further about Charlie Kirk and the dialogue he tried to create. I think he was successful, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think he was very successful, which is why he came under the spotlight and sometimes under the wrong kind of spotlight, because some people apparently wanted him dead and they succeeded. It's kind of sad because yesterday's event when he was shot and killed, it kind of marks, while at one point it kind of marks this death of this world of dialogue that he successfully created. There will be no second Charlie Kirk, and I think we're all very aware of that. What we can do is probably uphold and understand the value of dialogue that he shared with not just the United States of America, but also the entire world. The entire world is taking notice of what is happening in our country right now. We need to understand the value, importance of dialogue. Dialogue has the potential to be transformational for individuals and society as a whole. People who do not support dialogue certainly pray to the neon gods that we were talking about, because they believe in not listening to all the voices around them, all the different kinds of diversities around them.
They certainly might fancy themselves to be the neon god as well.
Well, I think people who do not support dialogue operate on this biased ideas of different entities, different individuals in societies, be it political, be it cultural, be it historical. So, they have their own ideas and they want to stick to it. And at the same time, they know that they're not going to be able to do that, keep on doing that, keep on maintaining that power all alone. That is why they try and sometimes even groom your children to follow a certain train of thought. They literally take the power of imagination away from people. Dialogue, on the other hand, proper dialogue between two opposing sides or two different sides, kind of rubs against that fabric of made up reality. And it brings forth a lot of real understanding about the realities, the lived realities that come from different individuals around us, thereby making dialogue a very powerful force to reckon with, because it not only helps increase understanding of certain topics being discussed, it also reignites the power to imagine, power of imagination. It helps a lot of children that there is a real world outside of what they were taught or groomed. And I think Charlie Kirk has successfully helped a lot of young people. He is a true icon among the youth today, and he will remain so. We need to make sure as adults, as responsible citizens, especially of this nation, that we keep on pushing for dialogue, because dialogue is a non-violent, physically non-violent way of understanding each other. And without it, human beings as a society, as civilization, we are lost. We have to try and keep this dialogue going, because it is necessary to regroup everybody who has lost their way, so that they can find their way and join us as a whole. It strengthens the nation as a whole as well, especially the young people.
I think we've made our point. So we'll just do one extra sign-off here after everything else. While Barry does his best to interrupt us, but we're not going to silence him. He's got things to say, and he's a good boy.
So is his brother. They both have lots of things to say.
Yes. So that's, I think, all that we've got to contribute in post. So we will sign off again, and once again, give all our best to Charlie's family, and keep them and keep the nation in our prayers as we move forward and hope for the best. So, God bless America.
God bless Texas.
Joy Ayahom.